guys, it's Kayla here from Journey Dog Training, and we're here for another Training Tuesday. Just to tell you guys a little bit about me before we go ahead and get started, I own Journey Dog Training, and that is an online dog behavior consulting service. So I'm a certified dog behavior consultant, one of about 300 in the world, and I just got that cert, so I'm super excited about it. And my specialty is really helping people with dogs with more serious behavior issues, things like resource guarding, dog-cat introductions, things that generally go beyond kind of what we think of as basic obedience, more of kind of troubleshooting dog behavior issues. But today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about 30 things to teach your dogs in the first 30 days of owning them. Obviously that's going to be pretty ambitious, so you guys probably are not actually going to teach all 30 of these things in your first 30 days of owning your dog, but you can get started on them, and they're things that honestly are probably lifelong. If your dog lived 30 years, you'd probably still be teaching all of these things over your dog's whole 30-year lifespan. But it's kind of a fun thing to think about, right? And a lot of these things are things that we can start teaching, again, right away in those first 30 days. So the reason that I'm bringing you guys this is partially because I love helping you guys, and I love sharing information with people who own dogs. I love you guys. I also am sharing this with you guys partially as a way to help you guys learn a little bit more about me and the services I offer, because I do also offer, as I said, remote behavior consulting. So you guys can get help with me through some email and text subscription options where basically you get my attention for a flat fee for a month, and every time you email or text me, I'm going to respond within 24 hours, a little bit longer on the weekends. Or you guys can purchase my time for 15-minute or 1-hour phone calls to really get down to nitty-gritty with your behavior questions. So just so you guys know, if you are interested in those programs, you can go ahead and check them out at journeydogtraining.com, and then right in that top menu, there's either phone help or email text help. Pick whichever one sounds good to you. If you're not sure which is going to be right for you, go ahead and email me. You can find my contact information on my website, which again is journeydogtraining.com. So let's get started. So we've got 30 behaviors to get through. I'm going to demonstrate some of them with my own dog, but most of them we're just going to talk through, because otherwise we're going to be here forever. Even if I manage to do 2 minutes per behavior, this is going to be a long video, right? Okay, so what we're going to start with right away when you've got your new dog is we've got 6 foundation behaviors to start teaching right away. And I say foundation behaviors, but really these are more kind of skills and concepts that your dog is going to be learning, and potentially your dog is learning these, as I said, for his whole life. So the very first thing that we want to teach your brand new dog, or if you want to start this over with your new dog, is that good things come from you. So this doesn't mean that you are the source of all good things, because your dog is still going to enjoy bunnies and cookies and other things that come from places other than you, but you want your dog to start learning right away in like minute 1, in the adoption room, at the shelter, or at the breeders. Good stuff comes from you. And the big way that I recommend doing this is via Kathy Sadeo's Smart x 50 training technique. Good. My own dog is a little bit jumpy right now, so he might be getting some treats intermittently. The Smart x 50 training technique basically involves taking 50 treats. I've got, a whole bunch here. And paying attention to your dog. Whenever something happens that your dog does that you like, go ahead and grab a treat and give it to your dog. So all that's doing is it is reinforcing your dog for stuff that you like, and also teaching your dog that he can get paid for his good behavior. So I just did an example of that right now. There was just a big door slam that you guys probably couldn't hear off camera. My dog kind of jumped and startled, but he didn't bark. So I went ahead and gave him a treat right away. So that's number 1. Good things come from you. The second thing is that paying attention to you is great. Often these two are going to come together, but what you can do differentially is not only, you're teaching your dog that good stuff comes from you, but you're also teaching your dog that if you pay attention to me, you get even more good stuff. So that's going to be doing things like while you're walking with your dog, give him a treat as you're walking. And I have a comment, so I'm going to go ahead and address that. Christina said she found a solution for the marking problem she had with her Rottweiler. And she had a leaded hard turtleneck with snaps around the area to add a sanitary napkin. Oh, okay, so you made your own kind of belly band sort of thing. That's really nice. Well done. That's very creative. Go ahead and, can I like this? I liked it. Awesome. Well done, Christina. So those are the first 2. Number 3 is one of the very first things that I like teaching dogs, and that's going to be a hand target. So that is behavior where you put out your hand I use this as my hand signal for my own dog, and your dog is going to put his nose against your hand. You can use this for a ton of different things, and at some point we're going to do a fun video or podcast. I'm launching a podcast at k9convos.com, so you guys will be able to see that there. At some point, we're going to cover the topic of if you could only teach your dog 5 things, 3 things, or 1 thing, what would they be? And I think hand targets might be my one, but you're going to have to wait and see what we say on the actual podcast. Hand targets, you can use them for pretty much everything. I use my dog's hand target to get his focus around distracting things. I use it to get him to get off the couch, on the couch, come with me, heel, wait at the door. All of these different things can all be done with a hand target. So I'm going to rotate you guys, demonstrate a little bit of what Barley and I can do with his hand targets, and then we'll get back to it. So rotating you down so you can see Barley. So I can use a hand target kind of like a cup. Let him get his treat. Boop. Get him onto the couch with it. Boop. Good. Get him off the couch with it. We can also teach some fun tricks with it. Oh, good thinking, buddy. Boop. So we can start using this as a way to teach a heel. So I'm going to lure him around. Good. And start practicing heel work. Good. Using that hand target again. And you guys can also use this as ways to teach fun things like leg weaves. So, boop. Good. Boop. Good. And you guys kind of get the point. So again, you can use these hand targets for all sorts of things. We use it to get dogs to wait at the door, to walk nicely on leash, again, as a focus thing. It's really probably my go-to behavior. And the nice thing is, if your dog is touching his nose to your hand, he can't be doing a lot of other things that you probably would like him not to be doing. So it's also a great way to interrupt your dog from unwanted behaviors. But let's move on. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so it's a Sergi suit. You bought it online, Christina? I was under the impression you made it yourself. Either way, that's really, really cool. I've not heard of that product. Okay, so those are the first 3. Then the number 4 of kind of those foundation behaviors that I like dogs to learn pretty much right away is waiting at doors. And that's because this is a pretty big safety thing, especially if you guys have a door that goes straight outside. So you can teach this a couple different ways. You can actually kind of use the hand target to teach it, where basically once your dog is good at the hand target, you can use that to get your dog to wait at a door. You also can often, basically how I do this is we put your dog on leash, and then you guys can just step on the leash. You can open the door, and if the dog surges towards the door closes. And then you open the door again a little bit, and if the dog stays put, the door opens more. And you basically keep playing that game until your dog stays put while the door opens all the way, and then you can release out the door. So there's kind of a whole process for that, but that is one of the big things that we like teaching our dogs right away. And it's not because we're worried about like alpha or dominance if the dog beats us out the door. It's more that like if your dog darts out the door into traffic, it's a safety issue. So, and that comes along with number 5, which is also a safety issue, and that's going to be leave it. And I've demonstrated how I teach leave it several times on both my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. But what I generally do, for the most part, is I use the It's Your Choice game from Susan Garrett. I'm not going to demonstrate with Barley because honestly, we've done it so many times it doesn't really work to demo with him anymore. So I've got some treats though. I'm going to put those in my hand, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my hand open and above the dog a little bit so it's easy. And then if the dog dives in, hand closes. If the dog backs up, hand opens again, give a treat. And then you just gradually make it harder by lowering your hand more and more close to the dog. And then you eventually can do things like putting it on the ground and covering it with your hand, and building up to essentially a default leave it where your dog pretty much waits for you to give him the cue to go ahead and eat something. And that's a really big safety behavior. So that's number 5 of our 6 foundations. And then number 6, that is so, so important, is working on teaching your dog to be okay with alone time. And I generally like my dogs to be somewhat comfortable inside of a crate. So it's often nice to be able to have them started on crate training relatively early. If you guys don't live a lifestyle where you travel much or are planning on doing competitions or anything like that, you might not need the crate training so much. Depends on the manners of your dog, but it is nice to have that crate basis. Again, because a lot of dogs need to be crated in the car, at the vets, or whatever. I'm pretty skeptical that crate training at home is actually going to transfer over to the vets, but it can't hurt. Anyway, one of the first things we want to do is make sure that your dog is learning to be comfortable at home alone right away. And one of the things that we saw a lot at the shelter when I was there is people kind of made the mistake of adopting a dog when they had like a week or two off of work and spending 24/7 with the dog. And then all of a sudden they went back to their 40-hour work week and the dog had not been left alone for like a week, maybe 2 weeks, or maybe like the whole summer if there was like a stay-at-home mom with kids and they adopted the dog in June. And then all of a sudden everyone's gone. And that is really, really, really hard for the dog to take. So starting on that alone training right away is really, really important. Yeah, oh my gosh. And this behavior can get really, really tough to fix really quickly. So it's really, really important to start it right away. With brand new puppies, you've just got to keep in mind it's going to go slow. And what I really recommend is trying to set up scenarios where you just leave the dog alone for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. If you can afford something like a treat and train, a manners minder, or a furbo, you guys can use that to help your dog be rewarded like while you're in the shower. But generally what I do with brand new baby puppies or with foster dogs or whatever is we do a lot of, I'm just going to go into the bathroom. I'm going to put you in the crate. I'm going to go into the bathroom. I'm going to leave you with a stuffed Kong, and then I'm going to come back. And then you just really, really slowly build up those absences. Some dogs, especially if you come with an adopted dog from a shelter or a puppy from a really awesome breeder, your dog already might come with some pretty good crate training alone time stuff. But sometimes that can still break, especially with shelter dogs. And my own dog, Barley, came crate trained. He was great being alone from day one at the shelter. But then once we started moving, and we currently move about once a week because we travel full time, he now has a much harder time being left alone. So we do a lot for him of hiding treats and hiding cookies around and making sure that when we're gone, he's occupied. And when we move to a new place, we don't leave him for 8 hours right away. We leave him for a little bit while we go grocery shopping or something like that. Good. So we've got some barking going on outside, so you guys got to see the hand target in action. Barley. Good boy. Really trying to keep him from barking during the training sesh. All right, so those are our 6 foundation behaviors. To recap, we've got good stuff comes from people, specifically you. Paying attention to the owner is good. Let's see. Hand targets, waiting at doors, leave it, and what I was just talking about, alone time. So start with those. The nice thing is all 6 of those, you can pretty much start right away because the only ones that really include like a serious training session are going to be leave it and then, the waiting at, leave it and hand targets. And then the waiting at doors is going to happen when you're going in and out for walks. And then you can start doing the alone time training. If you put the dog in the crate while you're in the bathroom or you put the dog in the other room while you're cooking. And you just start practicing those little teeny tiny micro absences right away. So most of this, you don't actually really have to set aside extra time for training. So those are the first 6. And then let's talk about the first 6 skills to teach your dog. So these are going to be a little bit more of actual training. Sit. I personally don't think sit is necessarily the most important behavior for your dog to learn, but that comes with a huge caveat because a lot of people expect your dog to be able to sit. And if your dog can't sit, you're going to run into situations where people cue him to sit and he doesn't know how, and it's just kind of, it's, even though sit isn't necessarily that important, it's kind of expected, so it's a nice thing to teach early, right? So often people can teach sit kind of there are 2 main ways that people will teach sit. One is using a lure, so that's going to be like this. This is easy for Barley because he already knows to sit, but what it's going to be is taking a treat and luring back up and over your dog's head until he puts his butt on the ground. So that's one way, that's luring. The nice thing about that is it tends to be really quick. The hard thing about it is if you get too reliant on that treat being in your hand, you're going to have a hard time fading that treat out and doing training without a treat. Okay? So your other option is going to be going ahead and capturing a down, and that is or a sit, and that's basically going to involve waiting until your dog sits on his own for something, and then rewarding him when he does that. I'm not going to demonstrate that here because Barley is already sitting, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and wait for your dog to sit down, and then you're going to reward there. Okay? Good boy. All right, so that's number 7. And number 8 is going to be down. I personally prefer down to sit. That might be because I own a border collie and he actually finds down really easy because border collies are very stocky. You probably don't need to teach your dog both sit and down right away. But you can do one of the two. Again, I personally find down to be my preferred behavior. That's just me and my dog. Most people are going to, if they meet your dog, like if your in-laws come over and they meet your dog, they're probably going to ask your dog to sit. So that's probably the thing you guys are going to want to teach right away. It's kind of up to you. Down, you can teach the same way as sit. Essentially, you can either wait for your dog to lie down and then give a treat, or you can go ahead and lure that down. I'm going to show you guys a couple quick tricks, though, for luring a down, because I have met some dogs that actually are really hard to get into a down. So we'll put Barley back on his little training platform. So he already did it. Oops. But if you guys are struggling to get a dog to down, one of the things you can do is you can put him up on a platform, and then when you are luring that down, you can get your hand actually lower than the dog, because sometimes what the dogs will do is they'll actually just do like a bow to get that treat. If you have them up on a platform, you can get your hand lower, and that's going to help convince your dog to go down. If you're having a really, really hard time teaching down, I would recommend actually doing down under something. So I have had a couple dogs where the down was just like, it was really, really hard to get the dog to learn to lie down. And what we did is we actually taught the dog to lie down by putting treats under the bed, so the dog had to crawl under there. Most dogs aren't going to be that hard, but those are a couple troubleshooting things if you're having a really hard time teaching your dog to lie down. Number 9 is stay. So I personally think stay is probably more important than sit or down, but we can actually teach it in conjunction with those two behaviors. By essentially what you're going to do is, as your dog gets really good at sit or down, whichever one you're starting with first, you can go ahead and start delaying reinforcement a little bit. And that just means when your dog sits, you're going to wait a microsecond before you give that treat. And then you're going to wait a full second. Then you're going to wait 2. And you're basically going to build up your dog's implied stay longer and longer until your dog is able to sit and then wait, a full minute before you get that treat. And that builds in that stay. That also helps beat the problem of the dogs that are kind of popcorning around in their sits and their downs. So that's one way to teach it. My favorite way to teach it that I highly recommend is using Karen Overall's relaxation protocol. So if you guys just Google that, Karen Overall's relaxation protocol, either my site or Boulder Humane's site is going to pull up, and you can find it there. It's a 15-day protocol. I've talked about it a ton on both my Facebook and my YouTube and on my blog. Pretty much everywhere. I'm obsessed with it. And it's a 15-day protocol that teaches your dog to lie calmly on a mat during increasingly distracting scenarios. It's amazing. We're going to talk about that a little bit more because I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more today because we do, yes, Karen Overall. I think I actually talk about teaching settle or relax as a whole separate behavior because it is a little bit separate from settle on a mat and a formal stay are a little bit different. But you can kind of teach the behaviors in a similar way. So that's number 9, stay. Number 10 is drop it. So often I will go ahead and teach drop it. Yes, Karen Overall. That is her name. And then it's the relaxation protocol or protocol for relaxation. Drop it. I often teach drop it by giving the dog one thing that he wants. Take it. So while the dog has that, then you come up and you offer something else. Good boy. Barley just spat out the cow in order to get his piece of kibble. Now we're both happy. I've got the cow back. Pretend that's a pair of socks that I wanted back from my dog. And Barley's happy because he just got a cookie. So you guys can basically practice teaching drop it by using those exchange games. And ultimately what's going to happen is if you give your dog something and then you approach, your dog knows that you're about to give him something great, so he'll spit it out before you have to toss the treats. It works great. Number 11 is going to be off. I teach off, as in like stop jumping on me or get off the couch. I teach off using hand target. You don't necessarily need to have a separate cue here. You can just cue your dog to do a hand target if your dog is trying to jump on someone or trying to get on the couch and you don't want them there. How do you wean them off the kibble for the drop-its? Basically what it's going to look like is as you approach your dog, so if your dog is chewing on whatever he's stolen and you're approaching, what you're going to do is you're going to practice this enough where you approach, say drop it, and then toss a piece of chicken at him. And you're going to do that until basically when you approach your dog while she's got something, she looks up and says, oh my God, where's my chicken? And that's when you start rewarding. So you're going to start by giving the chicken before she drops as a way to get her to drop. And after you do that enough times, your dog will start dropping things before you throw the chicken in anticipation of the chicken. And then you can start weaning off from there. But you want to don't think too much about weaning off until you're getting that voluntary drop it. Because you want drop its and exchanges to most of the time be something that is worth it for your dog. And then those times when you're on the walk and your dog grabs the chicken bone and you don't have treats, you can probably get her to drop it and it's not a huge deal because the rest of the time she gets something amazing. So I do actually like drop its to generally be something that's going to be rewarded externally probably the majority of the time for the majority of your dog's life, because the consequences for your dog not dropping it can be potentially high. And your dog's incentive to not drop certain things, like, I don't know, rat carcasses or whatever, is pretty high. Your dog probably doesn't want to drop that. So to keep everyone happy, I continue paying drop-its pretty much as long as I can. So before, then after, and then give less. Exactly. And you can also start doing things like giving it back. So Barley and I practice drop-its all the time with his disgusting stuffed cow. And I'll ask him to drop it. You know, we'll play tug, we'll tug, 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 tug. And then I ask him to drop it. And then I give it back to him right away. And we start playing tug again. So if you guys practice it in a lot of different scenarios, then again, in those real life scenarios, when you really need your dog to drop it and you might not have treats, your dog is still really likely to drop it because every other time she did it, she got paid. Okay? So we taught off just using hand target. You really don't necessarily need to teach a separate behavior here. Actually, Barley does have an off. I taught that by teaching him to jump off. If he jumped up on something, and that would get rewarded. And then I would say the word off, and I would toss a piece of kibble away. And he learned that if I say off, I want him to get off of what he's on and go get the piece of kibble. Okay? And then number 12 is relax on a mat. So that is what we were talking about with Karen Overall's relaxation protocol, but a little bit more specifically. Because again, a stay and a relax on your mat are a little bit different, and you can achieve both of them more or less through that relaxation protocol. But what the relaxation protocol does specifically that teaching a stay does not is that the relaxation protocol teaches your dog to ignore distractions in a really systematic way. And if you're a really skilled trainer, you don't necessarily need that protocol because you know how to build up those systematized increasing difficulties, right? But if you are not a professional trainer, odds are it's going to be much better for you guys to just go ahead and follow that protocol. They were designed by someone who knows a lot more than you or I do about dog behavior and dog cognition, and it works. When we do that podcast about the one behavior you would teach your dog if you could only teach one behavior, it is going to be a hard decision for me between relax on a mat and hand targets. So we'll see what happens. All right, so those are our first 12 behaviors. Now we've got 7 husbandry skills to start teaching your dog right away, okay? So those are a lot of different things that basically make medical and veterinary stuff easier for your dog. That's really important. Vets should not have to be a scary, terrible thing for your dog. It just shouldn't have to be that bad, right? Would I say that? Yes, I would say that a dog is going to do something because there is something in it for them. And that's basically just how behavior works. So the only ways that we're going to be able to get our dogs to do something is either because there's something in it for them, which could be food, toys, treats, praise, petting, something that your dog wants, or because your dog is worried of the consequences if he doesn't listen. And I would much rather focus on paying my dog for good behavior with treats, toys, praise, petting, all that good stuff, than I would focusing on threatening him to obey. Yeah. So your dog is not going to listen to you just because you are you, or just because your dog is a dog. So yeah, your dog's going to do something because there's something in it for them, or because he's worried about the consequences if he doesn't. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump back into those 7 husbandry skills to teach your dog. So number 13 is going to be nail trims, and this is a hard one. I am not super duper skilled, honestly, at teaching dogs to tolerate nail trims, but essentially what you're going to start with is teaching your dog some basic counter conditioning, which is just giving your dog a treat when he allows you to do something, and then building up the difficulty of that. So for something like nail trims, what that's going to look like is, so if this is your dog's paw, like this, you're just going to touch and then give a treat. Touch, give a treat. Touch longer, give a treat. Touch longer, give a treat. Hold, give a treat. Pinch a toe, give a treat. Grab a nail, give a treat. Touch the nail trimmers to the nail, give a treat. And on and on and on. This might take weeks or even months. I do have dog training friends whose dogs like literally love nail trims because they have done such a good job of being slow and systematic about teaching their dogs to enjoy nail trims. But you do need to be dedicated to that. And at the very least, you guys, you might not have a dog that like runs over and rolls over on his back and says, "Oh my God, I'm so excited to trim my nails." That's great, but you might not get that. It really depends on how dedicated you are and how sensitive your dog is. There's a whole lot of things. So if you want to go ahead and at least desensitize your dog a little bit to it so that your dog doesn't just hate nail trims, go ahead and start there. So we've got another question. So we're currently training with clicker, prong, and e-collar, and you're new and you're thinking and I'm thinking that it has to be that way. So are you thinking that it has to be that way with all 3 of those tools, or I'm not quite understanding exactly what you're saying, Christina, but I'm really excited you're here and I'm excited that you're learning. I, as you might know, don't use prongs or e-collars as tools. I don't think there's never, ever, ever, ever a place for them. I have not personally run into a situation yet where I felt like I've needed them, but that's taken me a lot of time in training to figure out how to get around them. I've got a dog that just won't let me cut them. What do you mean by cut your dog? And while I'm waiting for you to respond, Christina, I'm going to go ahead and jump back into ear cleaning. You're going to teach ear cleaning very similarly to how you would teach those nail trims. And that's just going to be often ear cleaning is a little bit easier. Oh, his nails. Okay, yeah. Nail trimming is a pain in the butt. And with my own dog, we've done a lot of work of me holding the nail trimmer and him running up and slamming his paw against the nail trimmer on his own. And then I'll do a lot of, we just practice shake, and then I grab his paw and then release it, and then a treat, building up from there. Nail trims are hard, especially if your dog, I adopted my dog when he was 3.5, and I think he had already had some pretty seriously bad experiences with nail trims, and it's been a long, long road to make that better. Ear cleaning is usually a little bit easier. Dogs don't often have as terribly negative of an experience with ear cleaning, and you're going to teach it a similar way. You know, touch the ear, give a treat. Lift the ear, give a treat. Touch the ear, touch it with your other hand, give a treat. Going on and on through that. And what I want you guys to be sure that you're doing with both of these is I don't want you to sit down and say, okay, my dog needs his ears cleaned today, so we're going to train this today. It's already too late at that point. These are probably not single training session behaviors, okay? Number 15 is collar grabs. That's probably something that's going to be a lot easier for most of us, and that is just teaching our dog that us reaching down and grabbing their collar is a good thing. And that is because there are times where you are going to need to grab your dog by the collar, either because your dog is doing something totally out of the ordinary that is unacceptable, or because maybe, I don't know, you didn't put the leash on when you should have, or whatever, or the leash slipped, or what, you know, it happens. And making sure that your dog is comfortable with you grabbing him, and potentially you grabbing him quickly and firmly, is really, really helpful. So I practice this starting with a young dog, or starting with any dog. I start this gently, and that's just going to look like grabbing the collar, you know, getting the collar, and then giving a treat. If your dog already has bad associations with collar grabs, you're going to start somewhere, you know, might just reach and then give a treat, not even touching the dog. and building up from there. It depends if your dog already has a bad association. If your dog doesn't already have a bad association, just start, grab a treat, or grab the collar, give a treat. Grab the collar, put some pressure to pull the dog, give a treat. Grab the collar a little bit more quickly, give a treat. And I like practicing that kind of like, like you're really scared and you're freaking out because your dog almost ran into traffic, like rough collar grab in situations that aren't like that, so that it's not so scary for my dog, and so that my dog isn't likely to turn around and be like, oh my God, what did you just do, and bite me. Okay, so I really like to practice that even up to those more intense kind of versions of a collar grab. I'm not just talking about gently leading with a collar. I do actually practice those kind of rough, intense collar grabs, just intermittently, because I do a lot of off-leash hiking with my dog, and there have been times where I've needed to grab him rather suddenly, and in the heat of the moment, I've been a little bit rougher than maybe I should have, and I want that to not be something that is terrifying to my dog. Number 16 is brushing and grooming. This is going to be a lot more important if you've got a long-haired dog like my Border Collie, or if you've got something like a Doodle or a Poodle, or something with like a really curly coat. Grooming for Doodles can be extremely difficult with the mixed breed coat types. It just gets really challenging. So you want to make sure that right away with your new dog, they're starting to get comfortable with grooming. I generally will start with this. You know, you can just start doing some nice petting and then transition to a nice like slicker brush. And then building up to some of those more intense brushes. So my own dog really enjoys that nice brush that kind of looks like a hairbrush, like a human hairbrush. And then we have some others that are made for dematting, and he's not as huge of a fan of those. So I only use those when he's already really relaxed and he's like half zoned out, asleep, and like we just went on a run, and then like I can get in there and work around those mats because he gets a lot of mats around his collar. And just make sure that your dog is comfortable with that grooming, especially, again, you guys, if you've got like a Doodle, an Old English Sheepdog, even a long-coated Border Collie or an Aussie, because that is going to be a part of your dog's life for the rest of his life. Number 17 is accepting restraint, and that kind of comes with the collar grabs. It's really nice to have a dog that when you grab his collar and lead him around, he comes with you. And that also goes along with veterinary stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this because this is something that is a little bit more challenging. I'm going to put my dog's squeaker away because he's driving me nuts with it. And we're going to go ahead and show you guys how you can start practicing teaching some of those things that's going to happen in a vet clinic at your home so that your dog is potentially a little bit more comfortable with them when you go to the vets. Okay? Come on, handsome. Be good. Up. All right, so when you're at the vets, a lot of the times when your vet is going to be giving your dog a vaccine, they're going to be doing a restraint where they put one arm around the dog and his head and one arm around your dog's belly. So we're going to go ahead and start. Stand. Good. Good. Just putting your hand under the dog's belly. Good. Good. And ultimately what we are building up towards. Good. Ooh, we have some birds. Is we are building up to a dog that is comfortable being held like this. Good boy. It's really helpful to have someone else help you with this training because someone can be training, someone can be feeding while you're doing the holding. If you have a dog that already has issues with restraint, guys, don't do that without the help of a trainer because your face is so close there, and if you don't know how to hold a dog appropriately, it's really easy to get bitten. But if you start this with a young dog or a dog that doesn't yet have issues, and you teach your dog that being restrained and held, particularly by strangers, but also by you, that's going to make things at the vet a lot less traumatic because it is just one more thing that when you go to the vet, your dog is like, oh yeah, no, I got this. You guys can hold me. And then it's no biggie. Okay, so go ahead and start teaching that. It's pretty easy if your dog does not yet have issues to just start practicing some of those different holds and hugs and stuff. And I want your level of treating for that to be really high. All right. Number 18 is going to be how to say no, thank you. And I think this is incredibly important. Letting your dog say no to you is one of the best ways to not only build trust with your dog, but also to avoid getting bitten. And I'm all about not getting bitten because, as I said, I really specialize in working with dogs with pretty serious behavior issues. And what we really like doing here at Journey Dog Training is practicing the pat, pet, pause rule. I did not invent this. And that is essentially teaching your dog. You're going to pat to call your dog over. If your dog does not come over, no petting. Okay? So that's one way to teach your dog no thank you. You know, you call him over in a way that is not a formal call. You know, just, hey, buddy, come on. If he doesn't come over, no biggie, no petting. Okay? And then if he does come over, you're going to pet a little bit. And then you're going to pause after about 3 to 5 seconds and see what your dog does. If your dog kind of stands there and looks a little like, I don't know if I really liked that, you know, you might get some lip licking, yawning, panting, but like the stress panting where your dog's lips are pulled way, way back, ears might be pinned. All of that is kind of indicating to us that your dog wasn't super into that. Give it a break. Your dog might also move away. In that case, when you do that pause, petting is over. Versus if you pat, call your dog over, start petting, and then you pause and your dog is like, wait, what are you doing? Hey, you missed a spot, you know? Then we know that we're still supposed to be petting that dog, okay? And that really just gives our dog more control over how they're touched, when they're touched. And again, it sounds a little bit woo-woo, but what we find is that when dogs don't like being petted and we let them opt out, they're actually more likely to say yes more often. So this isn't just like a woo-woo thing. It also isn't just a way to avoid getting bitten by aggressive dogs. It really helps make a lot of things better. My own dog Barley did not like being touched when I first got him. Friendly dog, he just did not like physical contact. And after, you know, a year and a half of pat, pet, pause with him, he actually is a pretty cuddly guy now, at least with myself and my partner, not necessarily with strangers as much, but he's a lot more comfortable with strangers touching him now than he was when we first got him. Okay, so now we're on to 6 life skills to teach your dog. Number 19 here is teaching your dog to ignore other people and dogs for the most part. So a lot of people, when they have a puppy in particular, they make the mistake of allowing that puppy or even encouraging that puppy to go say hi to everyone all the time. And it's really easy to let this happen because you want to socialize your puppy, so you want him to meet everyone. And or every time you see someone, they're like, oh my God, your puppy is so cute. Can I touch your puppy? And of course you want to say yes because you love your puppy and you're proud of your puppy and you're excited about your puppy, right? The thing is that really creates an expectation for your puppy. Well, it can do one of two things. It can teach your puppy that there's an expectation that every time she sees someone, she's going to get to go say hi. And that can create frustration later on when all of a sudden she's 8 months old and she's not as cute and no one, you know, and you're just trying to walk her and you're just trying to get through your day and she doesn't get to go say hi. And then you can get some frustrated barking, lunging behaviors because your dog is used to getting to say hi to everyone. That's one thing that can backfire if you let your dog say hi to everyone. The other thing that can really backfire is if you've got a dog that's more on the shy end of things, you can actually end up with a dog that is like, oh no, there's a person and mom's going to make me go say hi. And then you can also get the barky, lungy behaviors because that dog is like, hey, get away, get away, get away. I don't want to, don't touch me. So either way, we like teaching our dogs to ignore other people and dogs for the most part. And that obviously excludes certain times. I like my dogs to be social with other dogs, but most dogs are actually happiest with their group of dog buddies or potentially really, really large off-leash dog beaches, dog parks, stuff like that. So what we tend to do, leave it. We have this up here, and I'm going to put this away. I'll be right back. Okay, so how do we teach our dog to ignore dogs and people on walks? The big thing is right away with your new dog is don't let them drag you over to say hi to everyone. Again, it's really tempting with a puppy, and it kind of sucks to tell people like, actually, no, you can't come say hi to my brand new super duper cute puppy, but I want you guys to do that for the most part. And what you do instead is as you approach a person or a dog, I want you guys to, you've got your treat pouches on, and you can go ahead and reward your puppy for noticing them and then reward your puppy for staying with you as you move past them. So that's kind of the big thing here. And the last thing I will say about ignoring other people and other dogs is that on-leash greetings are particularly stressful for dogs, even socially savvy dogs, because dogs are aware that they can't move as much. And often what people do as they're letting their dog say hi is, actually, I'm going to demonstrate. Charlie. All right. So part of the reason that we really don't like these on-leash greetings for our dogs, as I said, is because it creates that expectation of on-leash greetings, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your dog, depending on your dog's personality. But also, a lot of people, when they're letting their dog say hi to another dog on leash, a lot of times what you see is people kind of like, they're trying to let their dogs sniff, but just a little bit, just a little bit. We're trying to keep it socially appropriate. We don't want butt sniffing, right? We are in public, Fido. The problem is that teaches your dog that when he's trying to say hi to other dogs, you're going to be there pulling back on that leash. Good question, sorry. And that is stressful for the dogs. It's kind of the equivalent of being like, you know, at school and having your mom behind you, like supervising every move. And even if you are doing a good job of keeping the leash loose and letting your dog circle and sniff and be polite, it's really easy to have things get tangled. And if your dog wants to get away or wants to communicate in another way, she's really trapped. Okay. So we've got a question about this. What if I place the dog in a sit stay and then tell the stranger to wait and stand there, and then I'd give the okay command to let the pup go over and have the stranger come over? I think that depends a lot on the dog. So that works really, really great for a lot of dogs. But if you've got a really, really hyper social dog, I have seen that totally backfire. Like with most things, almost every good training plan can totally backfire with the right dog, the wrong dog. Where the dog learns that, oh, okay, if I just downstay, I will get to go say hi. And I've seen dogs that learn to basically lie down and refuse to move. And their owners are like trying to physically drag them down the street because the owner didn't want to go say hi to someone at all. I actually really find it, in the vast majority of times, you probably, when you're walking your dog, the vast majority of the times, you want your dog to ignore those other people and those dogs because you're trying to get your walk done. So I actually really find it in general best to just avoid on-leash greetings. Again, that's also partially because I have a dog who isn't hyper social, so he doesn't really want to go say hi. And there is that sweet spot in dog behavior, dog personality, where you've got a dog who isn't hyper social, where we're worried about that dog creating a habit of frustrated greetings, nor is that dog a dog who just would kind of rather not say hi. And those dogs, yes, your solution probably would be excellent. So it depends, as always. So we've got ignoring other people and other dogs. Number 20 is going to be relaxing in the car. Most of us drive our dogs around to a couple places at least, and some of us more than others. But teaching your dog pretty early on that the car is a neutral to good thing is a great idea. And you can teach that by going on a lot of like nothing car rides. You know, just take your dog when you're going to go get gas or, you know, other trips. Obviously, you're not going to take your dog out to the supermarket when it's 115 degrees out and you live in Arizona. But take your dog out on some little car rides, you know. And even if you're actually like literally just doing a joyride, or drive 2 neighborhoods over and then go for a walk. You don't necessarily want to make car rides into a thing that is like crazy exciting either, though. You don't necessarily want to, every time you put your dog in the car, you go to the dog park, because that's when you get dogs that pace and pant and shake and sing because they're so excited, and that can also be pretty annoying, kind of frankly distracting and or dangerous for the driver as well. So I like teaching dogs to relax in the car by going on a lot of like boring, neutral to good car rides rather than trying to focus on making car rides amazing. And what you focus on is going to depend. If you've got a dog who's already pretty nervous about the car, you might want to focus on those amazing experiences. If you've got a dog who already is pretty good in the car, just focus on the boring stuff and just keep it good. And if you've got a dog who's really struggling in the car, one of the first things that we like doing is potentially looking at treating your dog for some nausea. Talk to your vet. And I am just quoting from, I can't remember which veterinarian I heard talking about this, but my understanding is that basically treating dogs for nausea in the car, there's not really a drawback to it, and it can help you diagnose exactly what the problem is. Dogs might start out being car sick and nauseous, and then actually it turns over into an anxiety thing. So just because you treat the nausea doesn't mean the anxiety will go away, but it's a good thing to try right away. Okay, 21 is going to be walking nicely on leash. I debated about whether or not to put walking nicely on leash this far down, but ultimately I put it this far down because for the majority of dogs, and especially the majority of small, young dogs, it's not something that needs to happen right away. And walking nicely on leash in some ways isn't super important, and in some ways is incredibly important. So it really depends on you. I personally find it really, really annoying to walk with a dog that's pulling. So that is why I put it really, I debated putting it higher on the list, because I am going to take better care of my dog and walk my dog more often if walking my dog is pleasant. But I also like to have it a little bit lower down because it's really hard. People think that teaching a heel or teaching a loose leash walk is like a basic thing, and it's honestly one of the hardest behaviors that you can teach your dog, because the fact is dogs walk faster than we do. If you let your dog off leash and let him go, you're going to see that his kind of normal, comfortable gait is much faster than yours. So that's part of it. The other part of it is your dog spends a lot of time cooped up inside, and the walk is absolutely the highlight of his day, so he really is raring to go. And there's just a lot going on. So teaching your dog to walk nicely on leash is like a whole course in and of itself. But it all boils down to, I like teaching it starting out indoors and just rewarding the dog for being in position near me. There are a whole bunch of different ways to do this. I am starting to really enjoy the pattern games, where basically you just walk around your house and you count to 3, and every time you say the word 3, your dog gets a cookie, and your dog starts learning to not only stay close, but also when you say 3, look up for the cookie. That's one way to teach it. The other is Grisha Stewart's silky leash technique, where you basically sit there and you put some gentle pressure on the leash, and if your dog gives into that pressure, go ahead and give a treat as well. There's a bunch of different ways to teach it, but the important thing with loose leash walking is to start indoors, somewhere really boring, move to somewhere a little bit less boring. So that might be your office after hours if you've got a dog-friendly workspace, might be your backyard, might be the hallway of your apartment complex really early in the morning, and practicing in that level of environment, and then starting to practice outdoors. And generally what I do when I teach dogs to walk on a loose leash is I will walk them on a harness while they're learning, and then we're just, so like, if I know that my dog can't walk nicely on leash right now, I'm going to go ahead and just put him on the harness, and I'm just going to deal with it, okay? We're going to deal with the sniffing, we're going to deal with the pulling, and then when we're working on training, I will put him on the flat buckle collar, and that helps the dog kind of differentiate between training and when we're walking nicely and when we're on more of a relaxed walk. And even though my dog now actually has a really nice loose leash walk, I still do this, and basically if I clip the leash to his collar, that is his cue that he's supposed to be in more of, not a formal heel position, but nice and close to me and paying attention to me, versus if I have his 8-foot leash attached to his harness, he's still not allowed to be pulling me, but he is allowed to zigzag and sniff and check things out a little bit, okay? So, number 22 is go to your X. Could be go to your bed, go to your mat, go to whatever. Teaching your dog to go away from you and go lie down on something. I, again, teach this in conjunction with that Karen Overall's relaxation protocol. You can teach this using a crate, anything at all, but it is a really important behavior, super duper helpful too. I practice this almost every day by getting out that crate or that mat, and while I am eating or cooking, if the dog goes into his crate or mat, he gets a bit of whatever I'm cooking or eating, or if I'm eating something that the dog can't have, he just gets some of his kibble, just, whatever he was going to eat for dinner, he just gets a little bit of it then. You might want to start doing that by either intermittently walking over and feeding the mat so that your dog learns that, okay, that mat or that crate is where food appears, or you can teach your dog to go to that crate, go to that mat, and then it can become a default behavior, basically because whenever you cook, you're going to tell your dog to go to the mat, you're going to feed him intermittently, and your dog will start going there on their own. And then you can start using this later on with guests and all sorts of other things. Just being able to send your dog away from you to go lie down, super duper helpful. I use it all the time when I'm like carrying groceries or cooking or whatever, just to get the dog out from under me so that he doesn't trip me and kill me. Number 23 is going to be how to use a puzzle feeder instead of chewing or digging. This is really something you guys can go ahead and start on day one, and that is just by giving your dog a puzzle feeder to feed him instead of a food bowl. And then you can also basically do this whenever you leave the house. You leave your dog with something to shred, suck on, chew, lick that he's supposed to do that with, and that helps get that urge out in an appropriate way, because why would you chew on the table if you could chew on the Kong that's stuffed with peanut butter, okay? There's a whole bunch of different ones that I really recommend. If you've got a really timid dog who's really, really new to puzzle solving, or especially if you've got like a puppy mill dog or a dog that's a little bit more on kind of that traumatized end of the scale, if that's what we want to call it, start with something really easy like pouring kibble into an egg carton, or pouring it into like a slow feeder bowl, you know, like the ones with the spiral in them. My dog uses his Kong wobbler almost every single day. That's our go-to. You can also do snuffle mats. There's all sorts of different puzzle feeders out there, and you can just kind of keep upping the ante. Basically, what I do at this point is I've got the Kong wobbler, I have a snuffle mat, and then I use my recycling. So if I get like a cereal box or an egg carton or whatever, I'll use that so that Barley gets to shred it. And that, again, really gets those shredding instincts out on things that are not less appropriate for him to shred. And it helps redirect that instinct to shred onto something, again, that, like, why would you shred the couch if you could shred an egg carton that's full of kibble? Number 24 is how to listen around distractions. And that goes with all of the skills that we've been teaching. And that is a systematic, it works best if you do it in a systematic way to gradually increase the distractions that your dog is expected to be able to listen around. So you might start out with a bowl full of super tasty chicken in your nice, boring, quiet kitchen. And then you might build up to, maybe a less valuable food, or maybe you're going to do that while, can your dog sit while you're walking back and forth? Can your dog sit while you're 10 feet away from her? Can your dog sit while your back is turned to her? Can your dog sit while the door is open? Can your dog sit when you're in the front yard, when you're in the backyard, when he's off leash in the front yard? Don't try that, actually. Never mind. We don't want to test that. Can your dog sit in a cafe, on a sidewalk, at the dog park? And we want to build up in levels of distraction. And there is no absolute, checklist where this is going to be the checklist of difficulty. For example, my own dog finds it extremely difficult to sit or really listen to me at all if I am holding a tennis ball, or if there is a basketball being bounced or a soccer ball being kicked around. He's a ball fanatic. For a lot of other dogs, sure, I mean, it's distracting, but like they can get over it. My dog has lived with a professional trainer now for 1.5 years, and his sits, if I'm holding a tennis ball or bouncing a tennis ball, he can still only sit about 50% of the time. He can lie down about 100% of the time. So, but teaching your dog to listen around distractions, there's no point in having a dog that can only sit in the quiet living room, right? You need your dog to be able to sit elsewhere, and that is something that needs to be incorporated into your training plan. So our last 6 are actually fun behaviors to go ahead and teach your dog. And the reason that I included these on this list is because it should be fun to own your dog. Like, you don't want to just spend all your time working. I mean, okay, I actually really love working on obedience, but a lot of us don't. And it's so fun to have a dog that can high five, spin, roll over, play dad, all that cool stuff. So I've picked out a couple different tricks and things that are both useful and relatively easy to teach, okay? So number 25 is personal play, and this is teaching your dog to play with you without toys. This comes super easy to some dogs. Some dogs just automatically, they're play bound, they want to run around, they want to play chase, they want to, tag you're it, this is so fun. Some dogs not so much. My own dog is one of those dogs who really struggles with personal play. He would much rather play tug of war or fetch than wrestle with me. So what we actually got as far as teaching my dog personal play that was pretty hard is I started doing a lot of reading of Denise Fenzi. She is all about play and engagement, and she's amazing. But what Barley and I did is he actually tore an iliopsoas, so he tore a hip flexor, and he was not allowed to play fetch at all for, God, it was like 12 weeks. It was a long time. So we actually put all of his toys away, so he literally couldn't play with toys at all for 6 weeks, 12 weeks. As I said, it was a long time. And that is when he started learning personal play. So we did a lot. He enjoys chasing me. He does not like being chased. So that's part of it too, is your personal play for your dog is going to look different from each dog. Some dogs enjoy that rough and tumble wrestling, whatever. A lot of dogs don't. So go with what your dog is offering you and play off of your dog. You know, if you really want to wrestle your dog, only do that if that's what your dog wants to do with you. Okay. So I followed Barley's lead, and I was able to practice. I would kind of boop him on the butt, and then I would run away. And he would chase me, and then he would dart off to go find a stick, because that's what he would rather do. And then he would bring me the stick, but I didn't want that. I wanted to work on some personal play, and through a lot of practice, because if he brought me the stick, I would just leave the play session, which is called negative punishment, removing something good. Eventually we got to a point where he's actually pretty good now with personal play. Again, it pretty much looks like me booping him and running away and then closing the door and, you know, playing some like hide and go seek, keep away, tag sort of games. But that's what he likes, and that's what we're into. So personal play is really, really great. It's really, really good for building your bond. 26 is up. This is a really useful and super easy trick. I've demonstrated it a whole bunch back here as I've been putting Barley up onto the platform so that you guys can see him. And I taught this essentially by finding park benches and other things around on our walks, and started with a hand target, put it up where my dog had to jump up onto the thing in order to touch the hand target. And I started by saying up as I put the hand target out, and then I actually rewarded before he touched my hand. Does that make sense? So yeah, managed to reward him before he actually touched my hand so that he wasn't actually doing the full hand target necessarily. And then eventually was able to fade out the hand behavior, the hand point. And now I can just orient towards something. I don't even have to point, and I just say up, and he jumps up on it. It's great for fitness for him. It's a great way to make walks more fun. I use it sometimes on our walks if I want him to get up and out of the way for, say, someone in a wheelchair. Get him up and out of the way. It's fun. It's a cute, fun little trick. I've also found it really useful. Tug of War is an excellent game. It does not cause aggression. It's a great way to get energy out of your dog, especially if your dog is kind of on that like frustrated side of things. Just getting that out into kind of a constructive way. Some dogs just love tug automatically, and the hard thing is getting them to drop it. We've already talked about teaching a drop it. And some dogs don't. If you have a dog that doesn't love tug, might not matter too much. You might be able to just, go through life without having a dog that tugs. But if you want to teach tug, I'm going to go ahead and recommend Hannah Brannigan's podcast episode called Teaching a Foodie Dog to Tug. You can find that if you go to just Google drinking from the toilet and then search for the episode on teaching a foodie dog to tug. I believe that it was sometime in the fall of 2018. I don't remember if it was October, November, maybe September, but it was relatively recent. And what she talks about is teaching her little dog to play tug. Her dog loved food, but was not super into tug. And she taught that she tried a whole bunch of things, and they weren't working. And how she ended up ultimately teaching it was she would play a little bit of tug, and she's got this little dog, so, she's not playing that hard. And if he managed to tug the toy out of her hand, she'd go, oh, you win. Then she would give him food, so that he learned that the point of the game was to actually tug hard enough to get it out of her hand. And that was kind of their breakthrough thing. I have a dog who's tug obsessed, so I can't necessarily relate, but I have taught tug to some dogs that also are not super duper into tug, and that is a method that I have not yet really had problems with. Because again, you're just teaching the dog that the point is to tug hard enough to get this out of my hand. And that works a little bit better than, there's some tug toys where you can like put food inside of them and the dog is like getting food as he's tugging. That might work for some dogs, but had more success with the way that Hannah Brannigan describes in her podcast. Number 28 is fetch. Again, fetch isn't necessarily super important, but it's super fun. And if you've got a dog that loves fetch, it's fun to play together. It also can be a little bit problematic. As you guys might know, my border collie is pretty freaking obsessed with fetch, and we actually can't leave balls or fetch toys around on the house. You guys saw earlier in this episode where I actually had to go, and Barley's cow is now on top of the fridge and out of the way because having it on the table here was too much for him, and he was just kind of sitting there staring at it and not really breathing because he wanted it so badly. So fetch can tip over. into that place. If you've got a dog who's like really, really, really into fetch, I would actually recommend going on a fetch moratorium and not playing anymore. I have seen some really incredible improvements in my own dog's behavior by actually eliminating fetch, which is a huge bummer because when I adopted a dog, I knew that I wanted to adopt a dog that played fetch. I love fetch. I grew up with labs and I love the game, and I can't really play it with my border collie. We do some disc stuff, and that's okay. But we can't play fetch casually on a daily basis because he just gets so obsessive and so worked up about it. So that's the downside of fetch. Upside of fetch, super duper fun, great way to wear your dog out. If you've got a dog that's struggling with it, you can teach it a couple different ways. You can teach the dog that he can bring the ball back to you in exchange for food, or you can play 2-ball fetch. At some point at canineofmine.com, I'm going to be writing an article on different ways to teach fetch and how to solve different fetch conundrums. But in the meantime, if you guys are having a hard time teaching your dog to fetch, just go ahead and comment below on whichever platform you're at, and I'll go ahead and give you guys a hand. You guys can also, as I said, always sign up for email or phone support. I do offer 15-minute phone consults, which are probably long enough to solve the fetch problem or at least get a good start. Those are $15 right now. So if you really want to teach fetch, you can go ahead and just start there. But also just, go ahead and comment below. If it's a quick answer, I'll just give it to you there. Number 29 this is one of my favorite really easy tricks to teach a dog, and it's really, really cute, and that's leg weaves. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt the camera down. We've actually already demonstrated leg weaves using the hand touch, but I'm going to show you guys again how to do leg weaves, and this is a really fun trick. It also is a great way to loosen up your dog's spine. It's really good for your dog. And it's just fun. Like, I don't know. I would rather have a dog that can do leg weaves than a dog that can, shake or whatever. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and rotate you guys down. I just got a low battery warning, so good thing we're on number 29. Oh, sorry, buddy. Oh, I just stepped on my dog. Okay, come on, bud. Okay, I'm going to have to adjust you guys a little bit, and my dog has already figured out the name of the game and is up on his platform, which is not actually where I want him now. Okay. Good. All right, so you guys can go ahead and teach leg weaves. As I said, using the hand target, or you can just lure with food. So if you've got your dog on your left side, I'm kind of short with kind of a big dog, so I have to kind of point my toes and make enough room for my dog to weave in between my legs. I'm going to get the dog hair in my mouth. So I'm going to start, I've got a treat in my mouth, and I'm going to treat in my hand, not in my mouth. And just bring it around and through. And start out rewarding your dog for every repetition. So now Barley is on my right. I'm going to put my left leg up. And you guys might start out needing to lure your dog a little bit more intensely. Okay? And if you're getting really stuck, it's okay to feed multiple treats per rep, okay? So, as I said, it's just a cute behavior. It's a fun trick. Cool to show your friends and family. Oh, look at how handsome he is back there. And it also kind of helps stretch out your dog's spine. The last one, number 30, is high five. I personally just think high five is super duper cute. And you guys can totally teach shake instead, but I think high five is cooler. Okay? So you often teach high five in a similar way to how you would teach shake. So what you can do here is you can put something in your hand that your dog wants and wait for your dog to paw at your hand. If you've done a bunch of It's Your Choice, which is I think number 5 on this list, that might not work though. So in that case, you can kind of capture or shape by waiting for your dog to lift a paw near you or around you and then rewarding for doing that. But ultimately, what high five is going to look like, as I said, it's super duper cute. Up. High five. Yeah! High five. Yeah! The nice thing about high five as well is shake works really well, but high five is also really good for your dog's core. You see how he's got to balance himself up like this? That's really good for him, and it's also better for him, or a little bit easier for your dog, than something like pretty. Oops. Oh. Pretty. Good. where he's actually sitting up unsupported. That sit pretty is pretty hard for a lot of dogs. So high five is kind of a nice intermediate, okay? Oops. That was a terrible treat toss. So that was the 30 things to teach your dog in 30 days. Do you guys want me to read through all those again? Like a little recap? Let's do it. So, to recap, we've got good things come from me. Paying attention to me is great. Hand targets. Yeah, hand targets. Wait at doors. Leave it. Boop. Good. Boop. Good. Boop. Good. Boop. Good. Hold on. Boop. Good. I don't know what is happening outdoors, but there was like a gunshot. Guadalajara, Mexico, folks. Alright. Sorry, I am frantically feeding my dog food right now to try to get him to calm down. So we're going to go ahead and do a treat scatter with the rest of his dinner kibble and hope that that lets him simmer down while he's finding all those treats so we can finish. Okay? So we were at number 5. Number 6 is alone time, inside of a crate or out. Then we've got sit, down, stay. Drop it, off, relax on a mat. So we're at 12. Number 13 is nail trims. 14 is ear cleaning. 15 is collar grabs. 16 is brushing and grooming. 17, accepting restraint. We talked about, the veterinary holds. 18 is how to say no thank you, which is that pat, pet, pause exercise. 19 is ignore other people and dogs, mostly. 20 is relax in the car. 21 is walking nicely on leash. 22, go to your mat, go to your crate, go to your bed. 23 is how to use a puzzle feeder instead of chewing or digging. Number 24 is how to listen around distractions. And 25 is personal play. 26 is up. 27 is tug. 28 is fetch. 29 is those leg weaves. And 30 is high five. So we're going to go ahead and sign off because my dog is still very concerned about what's going on. And we've got a rooftop guard dog that is going nuts right now. That's super not helping. Again, I'm Kayla from Journey Dog Training. You guys can find me and book my services at journeydogtraining.com. Don't forget to share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you again next time.